So tonight our talk is about where and when to travel in 2024. Tomorrow, our second talk of Wow Week is going to be about South America, smart choices and great value. We think South America is sort of the under the radar place to go this year, and we'll be explaining why tomorrow. On Wednesday, we're having a family travel chat where Wow List travel experts for North America and Europe and the Caribbean and beyond are going to talk about your smartest family travel choices this year. And then on Thursday, we're going to talk about emergency assistance and travel insurance. A lot of you are signed up for that one, and I think it's because it's normally a perplexing topic, but hopefully we will straighten it all out for you. And then on Friday, Tim Baker himself, my husband, photojournalist, whose photos you see on the website a lot and in the newsletter, he is going to be sharing with you tips for taking better photos with your phone, which is also a very popular one this week. So that's Wow Week, and we're just so thrilled to have you all with us. We see so many people coming back, and we're just very excited. So maybe we should go ahead and get started. First, I just want to take a moment at the start to thank our sponsor of Wow Week, which is MedJet. A lot of you know about MedJet. It's a travel emergency assistance membership. So if you should end up injured and hospitalized far from home, MedJet gets you back home to the doctor you trust and the hospital where your family is. And this will save you many tens of thousands of dollars. And this is why I myself have had a MedJet membership ever since my kids were little babies, because there was no way I was going to end up in a hospital halfway around the world away from my little babies. So, and on top of that, MedJet is making this hour with you possible. So thank you, MedJet. So let's move ahead with today's talk, where and when to travel in 2024. So last summer, there was this last year, there was this huge post-pandemic demand for travel, which we told you all about. We told you was coming last year at this time during Wow Week last year. We warned you. We knew that Europe was going to be inundated with tourists. On top of all the overcrowding, there was extreme heat, extreme weather, the wildfires that hit a lot of Mediterranean destinations. And then, of course, in October, then, there was the whole situation in the Middle East that started to take off with Israel being attacked and the war against Hamas. And so a lot is going on, and a lot of people are asking us, where should they go this year and when? And we are here to help. So let me first of all introduce the team. Many of you know Brook Wilkinson because she is at the other end of so many of the questions and trip requests that you send us. Brook, please say hello.
Yes, hi everyone. It's so great to see so many familiar names among those of you watching this evening. As Wendy said, and as many of you know, every day I'm answering questions from travelers like you, maybe you, and connecting travelers with the right experts for the trips they're trying to plan. A few housekeeping details for tonight. First, make sure to open up the Q&A box in Zoom. If you type in questions there, we're going to try to answer as many of them as we possibly can in the next hour. And also watch in that Q&A box for useful links and articles to articles and other resources. Some of our team members, Flory and Christine, are working behind the scenes to drop in useful links throughout the hour.
Yes, thank you, Flory and Christine. I should have said about Brook that she is also a fabulous editor and writer. She writes many of the articles and newsletters that you read. And but we desperately needed more editorial help as we grow. And so we brought in Hannah Howard, who is relatively new to the team, but she's a wonderful editor and writer too. Hannah, will you say hello?
Hi, I'm so excited to be here tonight. I just got to join the team and embark right away on this amazing trip to Oslo, which I'll share a little bit about later. And in part of my job, I get to interview our travelers about their dream trips, which you can read about, or amazing, inspiring adventures that they're having, which makes me jealous. I know a lot of you are very familiar with WendyPerrin.com, but for those who are new to us, our primary mission is to make travel better and extraordinary for everybody that we work with. So we write and edit. Our background is in journalism. We're journalists. Wendy has worked for decades at Condé Nast Traveler and created this wow list of trusted experts scouring the world for the very best local fixers to really make trips incredible. And our job is to make sure vet for the very best, introduce you to the right people for you, and help you make the perfect trip for what you want and need. And we are really excited to be here tonight, and I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate that because sometimes we just forget to like explain what we do, and some people are a little puzzled about it. But anyway, that is what we do. So thank you, Hannah. So let me just tell you sort of like, let's paint the big picture of 2024 and what we're expecting this year. So, first of all, I'm hoping that you all can see in the Q&A box that we've got a list of I hope it's there. What are the most popular countries for 2024? Flory, thank you for putting that up there. So this is really important to study, guys. So this is a picture. These are the most popular countries so far. These are where people have trips booked to. Our travelers have trips booked there. And this gives you a sense of where, what are the most popular places? And also maybe you want to look for more under the radar locales. And we're gonna give you tips for both. But so you'll notice on this list of 20 countries, 9 of them are in Europe, right? I mean, Italy is always the most popular country every year, but ever since the pandemic, Europe and especially Mediterranean Europe have been just so incredibly popular, I think, because people want it's like comfort food for the soul, right? To go back to the places we love, France and Italy and Spain. But the thing to be aware of, because there are people asking us for they're saying, I want to take my kids and go to Paris in July. And it's like, wait a second. That is when the Olympics are happening. They are going to be preparing all through July for the start. I mean, they're taking over the whole Seine River. That's where the opening ceremony is going to happen. The Seine is going to not be accessible. They're already saying that the metro in Paris can't hold everybody. So just there are things to be careful of, going on in Europe this summer, in addition to the Olympics, which is not just in Paris. It's in other parts of France. It's in Marseille. There's also, some people are sending in trip requests saying, I want to go to Puglia, Italy in June. Well, okay, that's great, except that the 50th G7 summit is happening in Puglia in June. And on top of all that, Taylor Swift is having concerts. You remember, you all probably read about the Taylor Swift effect on hotels and cities, how it changed the economy of cities in the United States. Well, she is performing all over Europe from May through August. So these are all things to be thinking about, right? And working around. What we've also seen is that more of Europe has already been booked for spring and summer than was ever the case in past years. So many people got shut out last year, because of the huge post-pandemic wave of travelers, that people have just been booking much farther ahead than they normally do. So you're going to find already that there's just huge demand. What this means is that, combine that with inflation, and prices are going to be very high again in the most popular parts of Europe this year. Not all of them. There are plenty of fabulous under the radar locations in Europe, charming places that most travelers miss. And I'm hoping that Christine or Flory will share the link to an article where we combine, we compile so many of those places, because that's what you're going to want to be looking for this year. Also be aware that peak season in Europe now is lasting much longer than before. So it used to be, oh, summertime in Europe, that's peak season. Well, now it starts in May, if not late April, and it lasts through October. So if you really want to go in shoulder season, be smart, go in March or November, and look at the places that are great to visit in March and November. We have a whole series of articles, Where to Go When, that tell you what's the best month for different places around the world. And if you look and, like, for instance, Malta, the little Mediterranean island of Malta, is so fabulous, and it's great in March, and it's warm because it's in between Sicily and North Africa. So, there are places that a lot of people don't even realize would make for a great winter trip. So definitely take a look at, like, the November and March editions of our Where to Go When series, if you're thinking about Europe this year. If looking at the list of the top 20 countries, I also just want to point out there are 3 countries across the Pacific that we warned you at this time last year. We warned you these places are going to be virtually sold out, and they are. They're super hot right now. Australia and New Zealand and Japan. And one reason they're so popular right now is that they were among the very last countries to drop their pandemic restrictions and reopen. They were very late to reopen. And so, of course, because they were off limits for so long, that's why now everyone wants to go. So, if you want to go to, like, New Zealand and Australia, just realize, they are, like, sold out right now. You need to choose the spring or the fall, shoulder season. If you look at the places in Latin America, the most popular right now for 2024 are Costa Rica, Ecuador and the Galapagos, Chile and Argentina. And of course, Patagonia is, in that combination of Chile and Argentina. We're going to be talking tomorrow about South America and why this is such a good year for South America. So please join us tomorrow. And so I won't talk any more about it right now. But just as a last point about this list of 20 most popular countries, Asia, the most popular is Vietnam, and Cambodia and Thailand. Now, those are places where your dollar can stretch very far. And so now I want to hand things over to Brooke, because Brooke has become a real expert on figuring out where to get the most value for your dollar. And so she's going to tell us about that.
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah. So speaking of Asia, personally, if I were headed there this year, I would look to South Asia, India, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal. That's where travel has been slowest to come back. And so that's where you'll find the fewest crowds and the best value for your dollar. Africa is close to my heart, and many of yours as well. I can already see there are several questions in the Q&A about South Africa. Safaris continue to be incredibly popular in South Africa, as you see on that list, made our travelers top 15 favorite countries for this year. And the best safari camps and lodges book up way in advance and command very high prices. So if you're still trying to book a safari this year, one tip is to look for camps or lodges that have just opened up. You may still be able to get in, and rates are often lower. They have, introductory rates right after a place opens, right before the word gets out. And our Wow List travel experts can help you find those kinds of semi-hidden opportunities. Another tip for 2024 safaris is to think about green seasons. So you may get a bit of rain. As called the green season, or the rainier times of year. And there may be some rain, but there's still epic wildlife sightings in Africa. I was in South Africa once in April, which is the end of the rainy season. And it did rain on us a few times, but we still got in 2 game drives every day. My son, he calls it his favorite trip ever, and he's gotten to travel to quite a few places. We saw lions with their cubs frolicking around. We saw rhinos, giraffes, elephants. We saw all the big 5, and the landscape was in fact beautifully green as advertised, which made for great photos. And so that leads me to my top tip for 2024, which is to travel off season, wherever you're going. I've done it 3 times in the past year, and I've been delighted every time. First, I went to Southeast Asia last April. That's, back a year ago, we were telling people Southeast Asia was a great opportunity, and I went to check it out. April was the end of the dry season, and so the air was a bit hazy. But the reward for me, which more than made up for that, was getting to take part in Lao New Year festivities. It meant multiple days of house parties, everyone from little kids to grandma and grandpa outside of their houses. Several times I was spontaneously invited to join these Laotian families drinking beers and dousing each other with water. It's a water festival that kind of brings good luck in the new year. So it was a blast, and one of my favorite ever travel experiences at a time of year when not many people are going to Southeast Asia. If you're thinking about that part of the world and you want those beautiful blue skies for your photos, think about the first half of the rainy season, which is May through July, when most of the storms come overnight, or October, which is the very beginning of the dry season, when things are still pretty lush from the rains. Another off-season trip that I did was going to Norway over Thanksgiving, which is November is kind of an unexpected time for Scandinavia, but the weather was still pleasant for hiking, fjord cruising, pretty much anything you'd want to do over the summer, we were able to do in November. Maybe wore a few extra layers of clothes, but we were quite comfortable, and I got to see the Northern Lights twice. So most of Norway's hotels are quite small, and so they book up far in advance for the peak summer season. The advantage of going in the off season, like spring and fall, is that there's plenty of availability, and you can build the itinerary you want, not trying to kind of piece together, where can I get a room at this great micro retreat on the edge of a fjord. The days in November were short. That's something a lot of people think of, that far north at that time of year. But I have to say, the light was absolutely gorgeous, and the dusting of snow on top of the mountains made things even more photogenic. Oslo was the coldest part of the trip, but there were a lot of great museums that I discovered in the city where you could go to warm up. And then the most recent trip that I've taken off season, I just got back last week from Peru. January's rainy season in the Andes, and so it's a low season time of year for Peru. And it's not great if you want to do a multi-day trek. You don't want to be trekking and camping in the rain. But for anything else, it's wonderful, I discovered. Lima was at its summertime best. It was beautiful. And over the course of my 8 days in Peru, most of which were in the Andes, it only rained twice during the daytime, and those showers were quite short-lived. And several nights it rained overnight, which made for clear skies, green landscapes, and these beautiful purple and white blossoms on the fields of potato plants they grow there that Peru is so famous for. It was also a lot of fun to see a lot of Peruvians on family holidays. It's, summer for them, so kids are out of school, and there are a lot of families taking their kids to the same, Inca ruins that I was visiting. So that was a neat advantage of that off-season travel. So that's my biggest tip for 2024. And now I'd like to hand it over to Hannah.
Great. So my background is in food, and so it felt very fitting for me to talk about a big picture food trend that we've felt here for the year ahead. And I also used to work at restaurants, and so restaurants are fantastic, and we're all for finding wonderful restaurants throughout your travels and having Michelin-starred tasting menus. But it's often not those that are the ones that really get remembered and that are really incredibly special for travelers. It's often these personal experiences, meeting locals, local bakers, cooks, olive oil makers, winemakers, and getting to get a glimpse into their world, which are the kind of experiences that our experts specialize in creating for you, that really are the ones that we remember, write home about. It's such an incredible lens into another culture and this really unique view into someone's everyday life when you get to be in their kitchen with a nonna making pasta, or get to be stomping on grapes at harvest. There's just nothing like that tangible, delicious, personal experience. Getting to see people's culture, heritage, and food is just such a connector. And I'll share about two of these experiences that I had in the last year that were really incredible. The first, on a barge cruise in Burgundy that I went on with Wendy, and the barge sails very slowly, and we got to visit these beautiful towns and bigger cities and markets and old churches. But I shared with the planners of the trip that I have a background in cheese and really love cheese. And being in Burgundy, we were already planning to taste this incredible lineup of 20 cheeses over the days. But they did something even more special for me, which I will always remember. One of my favorite cheeses is Epoisse. There's a rumor that it is illegal to take on the Paris metro. This is apparently not true. I fact checked this because I've heard it so many times, but it's rumored for good reason. It has this like really stinky, it's really stinky, which is why it's frowned upon bringing around public transportation. But it's this beautiful burnt orange color, and it's gooey and stinky and luscious. And it's been one of my favorite cheeses since I started to work in around cheese 15 years ago. And when I shared with this, they found us there's only a few places that make this in the world. It has to be in Burgundy. And they found us a small cheese making factory that made this cheese. And it's illegal to import this cheese to the raw milk version of this cheese to the US, which kind of tastes like a symphony as compared to a small quartet is what we get. We get the pasteurized version. And we got to sit down with the cheesemaker. They opened for us when they weren't even open, and taste this cheese. And I was just sitting in this little table with Wendy and a few other travelers, crying over my raw milk Epoisse experience. And like, these are the kind of experiences that we can create. And then I'll share about our trip to Oslo and another dairy related experience. We were there in November, so the sun started to set around 3:30, but there were these like long, beautiful sunsets, and we took a train ride about 45 minutes outside of Oslo. And our team was there. We were so cold, and we had our little hand warmers that we had found. And we were brought to this beautiful farm over the white snow with the slow, magnificent sun setting behind us. And we met Hans, the farmer, and he introduced us to his very small 20 cows. They each had their name, and we met Elsie, I believe, and we got to milk the cows. We got instructions. We got little teacups. We got to put on these snazzy green, kind of like my sweater, these bright green jumpsuits. And it was so fun, so unexpected. I was a little bit nervous to milk the cow. I'm also like a fairly new mom who just recently stopped breastfeeding, so it's like, oh, it's kind of funny. But it was wonderful to see their pride in what they did. And then after we were all cold, we headed into their beautiful, cozy farmhouse and met Hans's wife and son, who is now taking over the operation of this small farm where they produce Neer, which is this very fresh cheese, kind of like labna that you could scoop out of a tub, and it was tangy and delicious. And we sat around this beautiful fire and warmed our hands, and they showed us family pictures, and they cooked us this beautiful meal featuring their cheese in all kinds of different forms, starting with a blueberry soup, which was something that I had never heard of, which was delicious with the Neer on top. And then we had this beautiful baked kale dish, and they knew that Brooke was a vegetarian, so they had, you know, considered that into their menu planning. And on top, the Neer had created this gorgeous kind of golden brown bubbling crust. And for dessert, we even had Neer ice cream, which was so cool. But just getting to sit around the table with this really lovely family and get to ask questions about their life and who they were, and they had been at this farm for so many generations, and what was the future, and they, you know, they were just so warm, and those kinds of really personal connections, conversations are what makes the travel just go to a whole nother level. And we're really excited about these food experiences that we can bring to life for you.
And by the way, anyone who thinks that I was just talking about Norway in November and now Hannah said it was so cold, that was like the coldest day of the entire trip. It was much warmer when I was above the Arctic Circle than it was the day that we spent on the farm. So
It was really cold.
Oslo and then the farm, which was out just outside Oslo, was much colder than anywhere else along the coast.
It is great how these food experiences and meeting the local people and interacting with them over food and how they grow it and how they cook it and how they produce it is it really does shed so much insight. It gives you a whole different lens onto a culture. And then what was so exciting, can I just say that they gave one of their cows gave birth to a baby calf the other day and they named it Wendy. That was very exciting.
I got that email in a coffee shop, and I think I like shrieked because I was so excited. I thought that was so cool because we met all the cows. You know, we know them. So now next time we visit, there will be a Wendy cow, or if you get to visit, you could milk Wendy.
Right. So anyway, so that gives a sense of like the possibilities and also sort of like what to think about, what not to think about for this year. We're getting some great questions in the Q&A box. And, you know, I actually tried to answer some, and I wanted to give links to like the Vietnam Insider's Guide for the people who are asking about Vietnam. And I think we're not allowed to put links into, like, I can't do it. But maybe Flory or Christine can put a link to the Vietnam Insider's Guide in there so that you guys can have that. But Brooke, do you want to go ahead and maybe?
Sure, yeah, and those insiders guides, they're great resources, which I definitely wanted to bring up. We get a lot of questions. We did get a lot of questions prior to this evening about, you know, is India good? What's it like during monsoon season in June? How about southern Italy and Sicily in March? When's the right time of year to go to Scandinavia? So every insider's guide we have, and there are more than 100 of them for destinations all over the world. They each have a section on the best time to go and the worst time to go to each of those destinations. You can find those insider's guides by clicking on the teal box in the navigation bar on WendyPerrin.com. I think Flory or Christine will also drop a link into the Q&A box. But for anyone who's wondering, you know, who has a destination in mind and is wondering what the smart time of year to go, not the obvious, this is high season, but the smart insider time of year, it's in those insiders guides. There were a couple other questions. I know we've got a lot of good ones in the chat. There are some that we got submitted prior to this evening that I just wanted to quickly go over. One listener asked about going to Morocco, wondering if it's safe based on the Middle East crisis. Wendy, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, I want to tell everybody that Morocco really isn't in the Middle East. It is just across the Atlantic Ocean in Africa. I have been there 9 times. I have never felt unsafe or at risk in any way. All of our travelers and readers who have, you know, what I mean by travelers is that you can, you know, as we've explained, you can come to the website, fill out the trip questionnaire, and we will suggest where to go and like who to use for your trip. And all of the people, there are many, many of our travelers who have been to Morocco since October 7th, and they come back saying they've had an amazing time. In fact, we can share the Morocco reviews page with you if Flory or Christine can share it. Because, you know, it's often when a lot of people think that a place might be risky, that it's actually the best time to go because there aren't that many people there. And so the local people, they're like hungry for travelers and they welcome you with open arms. And that's the experience that travelers to Morocco have been having ever since October 7th, honestly. So I think also, obviously, I mean, as I said, I've been there 9 times. When you've traveled to a place a lot, yes, you have a certain level of confidence and comfort that you don't have if you've never been there before, but you also realize the extent to which nothing nothing out of the ordinary happens. Like everyone's there living their normal everyday life. You don't read about that in the newspaper because that's not what newspapers cover, right? The news doesn't cover normal everyday life happening as usual. They only cover sensational crises. So I've spent my life going to so many places where everyone's terrified for me because of what they're reading in the news, and I'm there having an amazing time. So anyway, long story short, I think now is a great time for Morocco.
And to that same topic, there's a question from Susan asking, could you address the current unrest in Peru, Machu Picchu especially? And as I mentioned, I was just there. So I was on the train to Machu Picchu the day of the protests that you may have later seen in the New York Times or in other sources. I was literally on a train that was stopped by protesters. We made it through. We saw Machu Picchu. I never saw a single protester. I couldn't find one. And my experience was very well kind of curated by the people, the WOW list travel expert who had planned the trip. So we were on the train, got stopped by protesters on the tracks, waited an extra hour or two, got through, saw the ruins that afternoon. And we were due to spend a night at Machu Picchu, but found out, well, the planners found out that the trains would not be running the next day. And so they quickly rearranged things to get us on a train out back to Cusco that very night. And while what I heard was something like, hundreds of travelers ended up stuck in Machu Picchu in the town of Aguas Calientes for a couple of days. Again, not at risk, but they were stuck there having to kind of rearrange their trips. We were out, we were taken care of. We were all, had new rooms at a hotel in Cusco and a new itinerary. So it was all kind of a seamless experience in which I never felt that my safety was at risk, never saw a single protester. We also had a question about a honeymoon, recommendations for destination for a honeymoon, and that felt like a good jumping off point to tell you all about our traveler reviews, which are such a great resource. So we've compiled our favorite reviews of honeymoon trips, but then also lots of other kinds of trips, types of travelers, solo travelers, grandparents and grandkids traveling together, and different destinations, 8 trips to Asia, trips to South America, trips to Europe in winter. Those are all on our website. If you go to the black navigation bar on WendyPerrin.com and hover over traveler reviews, you'll find a whole list of different compilations we've got. We'll also probably put some links in the Q&A box. But that's a great resource for if you've got a certain kind of trip like that. Wendy, there's a question about France. You mentioned the Olympics in Paris coming up. Do you expect the rest of France, not just Paris, to be insane in the lead up to the Olympics? What's kind of the spillover effect of the Olympics in Paris?
So what we understand is that from our contacts there, actually Jennifer Virgilio, who is a Paris expert on the WOW list, has a lot of great intel about the Paris Olympics. Things should be pretty normal up until the beginning of March. After then, they're going to start setting things up in Paris. And again, a lot of it is around the Seine River. And so there's going to be traffic congestion and everything. It should be okay for a while, but obviously it will become progressively, there'll be progressively more congestion, more traffic issues as we lead up to July 26th. There are other parts of France that will be affected. I mean, like there's a whole lot of stuff going on in Marseille, the marina there. So there are other events around France. And I just think it's very important for anybody thinking about going to France in June or July, take into account that you know, there's going to be a lot of disruption.
Great. We also had a question I just saw that came in about Egypt and Jordan. Is that similar to Morocco? What's the safety situation there?
So Egypt and we have had travelers who continued with their trips after October 7th. They wanted to continue with their trips to Egypt, to Jordan. They came back saying exactly what I said before, that like it was like nothing was happening. Life was normal. They had an awesome time. I'm really hoping that Flory or Christine can share in the Q&A box the reviews pages for Egypt and for Jordan, because it's fascinating to hear from these travelers who just had the time of their lives on these trips there. You know, it's possible to be, you know, it's possible to be sort of like in a neighboring country to places where there's a crisis going on, and yet you don't even know it's happening. I know because I've been in that situation in countries before. And that's what our travelers who are coming back from Egypt are saying.
Yeah. Let's see, we have a question from Cindy. Will the travel compression last into 2025? I guess by compression, maybe she means, you know, so many people, supply versus demand.
So what we're seeing, which is fascinating, we've never seen so many people booking travel so far ahead. There are so many people who are already asking about travel in 2025. They're asking for they want to book trips for 2025. They're planning it now. So I think obviously it's impossible to predict what's going to happen next year, but I do think that, you know, the smartest thing was, as Brooke said, wherever you're planning, think about going in shoulder season. Think about going to lesser known locale. There are so many, you know, they're the places everybody knows and wants to go to. Everybody talks about Santorini, right? Everybody talks about the Amalfi Coast. They're mosh pits. I mean, they're like full of, they're packed with travelers and cruise ship passengers and everything. And you know, go off season or choose a little Greek island or a place in Italy where nobody else is. There are many of them, and they are so lovely and charming.
Yeah. Yeah. And someone else, Teresa, asked if off-season isn't possible, what's the best strategy? That's one that you just mentioned, Wendy, but also every month of the year is off-season somewhere. So if you're not wedded to a particular destination, there is somewhere in the world, you know, that it is off-season. If it's Christmas, go to a Muslim country. You know, there are options for every time of the year, if that's what's got you stuck.
And you can always write to questions@WendyPerrin.com, or just go to the website and like click on Ask Wendy, and you'll see it says get a personalized trip recommendation. We love people who are savvy enough to realize, okay, I've got this period of time free and I want to go somewhere where it's off season, but still the conditions are perfect for what I want to do and the weather's perfect. Tell me where to go. Brooke and I love those questions.
Yeah. I think our listeners have been hearing our warnings about Italy. So we've got a couple different questions about going to Emilia-Romagna in summer. Will that be crowded? Is there anywhere in September, October in Italy that's not super crowded? Wendy, what are your tips for people who are just hell-bent on going to Italy?
No, I get it. I mean, especially if you have kids in school, like you don't have a lot of choices for when you can go. Although I think spring break in Italy is a great idea. I've done it with my own kids, and we've also done Christmas and New Year's in Italy. But here's what I really think, honestly, if I were going to Italy in the summertime, I would want to talk to the Italy specialists on the WOW list. Absolutely, because they know the places that are under the radar that have not been discovered yet in those areas. And so honestly, that is what I would do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We also have
and also read the review. I mean, I think, sorry, just if you read the reviews pages you actually can get so many great little tips about where to go. if you just read through the reviews pages of these Italy specialists, and if you're not sure where to find them, I don't know, hopefully Flory or Christine can share some, but it's, if you just go to the wow list and you look at the Italy section, click through to some of the reviews pages, and you will get a lot of very helpful tips about off the beaten path places to go.
Yeah. Listener Diane asks, looking for a family trip to Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand over the Christmas break, 2024-25, good or bad timing? So my take, Christmas is going to be busy just about everywhere, with a few exceptions. Sometimes that's the only time you can travel, especially we see, especially families with grown children, children who are in their 20s, maybe don't have a lot of flexibility in their professional life yet. And so it's really the only time they have a week or maybe a little bit longer off of work. So if that's the only time you can go, I mean, yes, the weather is pleasant at that time of year in Southeast Asia. Will it be crowded? Yes. There will be a lot of travelers going. So it's kind of balancing what your availability is, what your family's options are with knowing, where you in the world you want to go, and then talking to an expert who, as Wendy says, can get you into the smaller, lesser known parts of a country or a region. I fell in love with Laos. That's not a place that you mentioned, but I absolutely loved it, and I would go back in a heartbeat. As much as I enjoyed spending time, and I've been to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand as well. But things like that you can think about to avoid the crowds in those high season times. Let's see. Someone asked, Joan asked about travel to the stands right now. Wendy, you've been to Uzbekistan.
Yes, we had the most amazing trip with my kids. It was our last big international trip before the pandemic. Uzbekistan. It was fascinating. It was so much fun. Khiva and Bukhara and Samarkand are like, I just can't wait to go back someday. The Silk Road, that's what it is. So, and of course, there are other stands in that neighborhood. And I know people who are just back and had a fabulous time. I know other people who are trying to go. So I think it's a great time for it. I mean, it's in terms of the timing, you can go in August, you can go in the summer, in terms of safety, I would say, yes, I would go ahead.
Mm-hmm. And someone asked about, let's see, I'm just looking. Okay, Rhoda asked about an off season for Japan. My understanding is kind of avoiding the spring cherry blossom season if you can, but you can going in May, you may still get some blossoms and you can still have that beauty, but you'll avoid the crowds, which if you saw photos of the cherry blossom weeks in Japan in 2023, it was pretty busy, pretty packed. And also the fall in October is another lovely time. But as Wendy said, Japan is already crammed for 2024. So if you can, maybe put that off for a quieter time of year, or even another year after the demand has died down a bit.
I think Japan is also one of those places where you really need to plan it far in advance. I mean, there just isn't a lot of availability. I feel like most people going to Japan, they're planning their trip a year out. So it might be a good idea just to sort of just think of it as one of those future trips to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our listener David asked, any safety concerns or tips for Budapest, Prague, Copenhagen, and Stockholm? Wendy, what are your thoughts about going to cities in that part of the world?
To me, those cities feel so safe that I don't even know what the safety concerns really would be. I grew up in New York City. I grew up at 54th Street and 7th Avenue in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. So maybe I'm just, I don't know. And I'm just used to big cities but I mean, how do you feel about those places, Brooke? I feel like, the same thing you do in any big city, you take, but I feel safer there than I do at home often, because there just aren't as many guns around,
Yeah. Yeah, I think street smarts are pretty universal, and they can go a long way to make you feel safe.
Yeah, and doing things like, you avoid pickpockets by, you instead of putting your wallet in an outside pocket in your jeans where anybody can grab it on the subway, you put it in an inside zippered compartment, or you wrap a rubber band around your wallet to create the friction. It makes it hard for fingers to, pickpockets to take it out. So I mean, there are tips like that, but that's true for like any city in the world.
Right. Traveler Anne asked, when you were heading to Norway to see the Northern Lights, how long a trip do you suggest? So that's a good question. And I'm glad you said Norway, because in our experience, Norway is the #1 place to maximize your chances of seeing the Northern Lights. There are a number of places around the world that you can see them, other parts of Scandinavia, Iceland, Alaska, certain parts of Canada. But the combination of the weather conditions, the microclimates, and the accessibility in Norway has been the best experience for our travelers in getting to see them. I would say in terms of a trip, I mean, you probably want to spend at least 3 nights with your focus being seeing the Northern Lights. And that means, staying up until the wee hours of the morning, going on a safari, a Northern Light safari, they call it, which is like in a specialized vehicle with a guide who's been scouring maps and weather forecasts to find out where there won't be cloud cover, where you have your best shot of seeing them. So you're driving, you're not just sitting back in your hotel room or, your igloo and waiting for them to come to you. If you want the best shot of seeing the Northern Lights, you go to find them. And so what we've heard is if you could commit 3 nights or more to doing that, you have a pretty darn good shot of getting to see them. It's always in Mother Nature's hands, but and that probably means, somewhere around a week's trip, because obviously there's a lot more to see and do in Norway, even in the winter. If you go in March, the days are actually still quite long, and you can go snowmobiling, snowshoeing, dog sledding, spend time with the Sami people up north. So there's a lot to do during the day as well.
When the 3 of us were in Norway, we were in Oslo back at the end of November, beginning of December. And it was so cool because we were sitting at dinner one night, and then people were saying, go outside, it's the Northern Lights. And I mean, it's very rare to actually see the Northern Lights in Oslo, but we all got up from the dinner table and ran outside. And it was very exciting. So you never know, it's nature.
Yeah, yeah. And Susan asked, what are your thoughts about Iceland just now? The Northern Lights there are amazing, but do the volcanoes just now make a trip iffy? I'm dying to take my family. So yes, the Northern Lights are incredible from Iceland. What, as I understand it, because it's an island out in the middle of the ocean, the weather is very changeable there, and there's tends to be a lot of cloud cover. So that's why your chances aren't quite as high there to see the Northern Lights as they are in certain parts of Norway. But when you do, and this year and next year are actually a peak period for Northern Lights viewing. The lights kind of ebb and flow based on solar storms. And because the storms on the sun are stronger, it's creating more chances to see the Northern Lights here on Earth. But to your point about the volcano eruption in Iceland, so I was in Iceland last summer, and there was not a volcano erupting at the time. I mean, I kind of would have enjoyed seeing that if it were safe. And there are many what they call their tourist volcanoes, where there'll be a kind of gentle eruption. Many of the volcanoes there are not the explosive eruptions. So it can be, you can kind of navigate safely around it. There is a town that has been evacuated, and it's obviously a terrible situation for them. There's no word of when they'll be able to return, but it is a very specific area. The airport has been fully operational throughout. It is, it's kind of lava leaking out of a volcano rather than, erupting with force out of a volcano. So travelers are not at risk. I would absolutely go back in a heartbeat. And I think you'd be very safe.
I know a lot of people who like to travel to where volcanoes are erupting. I mean, in other places around the world too, it's like they're the people who don't want to go and then the people who do want to go.
Yeah. I'm glad we have so many people asking about the best time of year to travel. It sounds like you guys are really kind of getting savvy about the traveling at the right time. Sandy asked, we were thinking of going to Vietnam, which has microclimates throughout the north, central, and south of the country. You are spot on. They're like because it's such a long country, it's kind of 3 different zones and regions. What is the best time to go in dry season, since we are looking to go from Hanoi in the north to Saigon in the south, plus a nice, relaxing, uncrowded beach vacation that has the least amount of rain. So my understanding, if you're trying to see the whole country, your best bets are spring or fall. So go in March, which is probably a little late for 2024. I don't know if you're planning for 2025. That's an option, or wait until October and do it in the fall. Those are the best to combine the north, central, and south of Vietnam. Let's see what other.
I love this comment about Italy. This advice from Elaine: for anyone who loves Italy but doesn't want to deal with hordes of people in Rome, Florence, and Venice, go to Sicily. We've been in Italy a dozen times, and Sicily is simply fabulous. History, scenery, food, wine, and incredibly friendly people, and no crowds except Taormina. That's great advice, and that's great to know. I think Taormina, that's like where a lot of cruise ships stop. So during cruise season, that's probably a big reason for the crowds there. But that's great advice from Elaine.
Thank you, Elaine. And we have a couple questions from solo travelers, which is interesting. We get a lot of travelers who are traveling on their own and have incredible experiences. One traveler here, Nancy, is excited to hear about Vietnam. Now just have to figure out who to go with, tour group, etc. Female, age 69, husband won't go. I love that you're going to go anyway. Leave him at home. And Patricia said, can you recommend senior single ocean cruise? Wendy, do you want to talk a little bit about solo trips that have worked for our travelers?
Well, I think the tricky thing about cruises is that there's that single supplement. That's what most single travelers want to avoid, is they don't want to have to pay for 2 people, because cruise ship rooms are based on double occupancy. So I think that's part of the trick, is so I would say go to a very clever, savvy cruise travel specialist. You'll find them on the WOW list. And because they will be able to look at, like, okay, here are the cruises where it makes a lot of sense for a single traveler and you can avoid the single supplement.
Absolutely. And there is a compilation of reviews on our website from solo travelers. And you mentioned the traveler was talking about going to Vietnam, was talking about a tour group. The trips that our WOW list travel experts plan are all private trips primarily. And we've had a lot of solo travelers really enjoy not being on a group trip, which many solo travelers think, oh, I want to be around other travelers. But when you're on your private customized trip, you're doing exactly what you want to do. And you're meeting with local guides. And when you're single, you're chatting with them. You're not chatting with your family in the seat next to you on the drives. You're chatting with your guide. You're hearing about what their life is like. You're, sharing stories about your kids who are the same age or whatever it may be. So those private trips can work really well for solo travelers.
As someone who's, a journalist, I mean, like all those years, traveling on assignment, and you're traveling solo, that's what you're doing. But you're meeting with these local experts and guides and fixers and, local people who can introduce you to this person or that person. And it's fascinating. Like, I love traveling solo because you meet more people. It's kind of sad to me when you're traveling, when you go with a group, well, then you're with a group of other Americans who maybe, you're talking about the same stuff you'd talk about back home. I don't want to be talking with the local people about what I can only learn there in the other country. And so I think there's so many opportunities for solo travelers just on a private trip, again, what Brooke was saying, on your own, but meeting people all day long. and having that companionship, but it's just it's sort of like an extroverted, you can learn so much about a culture, as much as a journalist would.
Yeah. And I just want to point out, we got some expert intel here in the Q&A box from Sanjay Saxena, who is an India expert on the WOW list. He saw the question about monsoon season and offered his take. Traveling at this time, one has to embrace the monsoon and not look at it as an adversary. I love that. It's part of the experience, right? Like, embrace what's different about different parts of the world. Sanjay says the locals just go about their business as usual. Whenever there's a downpour and it rains buckets, actually fun to watch. People just step into the nearest doorway, wait for the downpour to cease, and then continue on about their work. And sometimes that creates that spontaneous conversation. Whatever the closest store was, you walk in and all of a sudden you're chatting with someone else who's in there waiting for the rain to end, or the shopkeeper or something. If your clothes, Sanjay says, if their clothes get wet, the lightweight cotton dries up quickly. I discovered that in Laos when I was getting doused with water during New Year. My clothes were dry in half an hour, and it felt quite good to be wet. One of the important things to remember, Sanjay says, is that the rainwater is not the same freezing cold water we get in North America. It's warmed by the hot air, so you don't get cold. He says his boys loved playing in the rain, as do the local children. And he does also mention that certain parts of India do not see the full brunt of the monsoon, like Rajasthan, and Ladakh is on the rain shadow side of the Himalayas. So thank you, Sanjay, for chiming in there. Let's see, we've got just a few more minutes. Rebel's asking, interested in Slovenia. But your insider's guide is from 2014. I'm not sure who your trusted travel planner is. So Rebel, great question. I've been to Slovenia. I would love to chat with you more about it. If you write to Ask Wendy, we can connect you. There are a couple different people we know for Slovenia. So depending on kind of the trip you want, we can get you to the right person.
Rebel is so smart to be interested in Slovenia. Slovenia is awesome. It's like, I see it as the Portland, Oregon of Europe. It's like, it's just got all this greenery. It's got this really cool, Ljubljana is like it's this college town. It's got so many fun cafes and street life and art galleries, and it's really lively. And oh my gosh, Lake Bled is absolutely gorgeous. Slovenia has so much going for it. It's one of those undiscovered gems, and I'm just so glad that that Rebel at least is interested in it.
Yeah.
It's a smart move these days.
Definitely. We got a couple of people chiming in about solo travelers. I guess some cruise lines are waiving single supplements, so that's something to watch for.
Awesome.
And Nancy says she's taken 3 WOW list planned trips solo and met fantastic guides and easily got into places because I was alone. So that's great to hear. Thanks for that confirmation, Nancy. And Nancy also asked, how about closer to home, Canadian Maritimes and Newfoundland? Wendy, I know that's a place that you love.
I'm a huge fan of Newfoundland. I went there a few years ago. I was looking for a place to escape to from the New York City heat in August. And I mean, like, most people in August, they're going somewhere on the Eastern Seaboard, and it's just seaboard, and it's just crowds and heat. And anyway, we went up to Newfoundland, and it was it's so blissfully uncrowded and cool, but not too cool, and gorgeous. And if anybody wants to go to Newfoundland, please just write to us, because I have so much advice. And we also know a fabulous Newfoundland travel specialist.
Excellent.
So, well, I guess it looks like we're out of time. But we are so glad that you were able to join. Oh, wait, one more. Oh, when is a good time to go to Banff? Well, it depends on whether you want to go skiing or you want to enjoy, the summer in the Canadian Rockies. So, but either of those will work. And also Janine says, wonderful to see you during WOW Week. Oh, thank you so much. We look forward to it too. And we're so glad you all were able to join us today. Thank you. Thank you. Just so you know what's coming up. if you go to WendyPerrin.com, right there on the homepage, first article you see is Wow Week. It's the calendar of events, and you can go there and see what our other talks are coming up this week. You can sign up for any of them that you want. So we hope we will get to see you at some of those other talks later in the week. And we're really happy that you joined us for this one. If you have any other questions, of course, you can reach out to us at questions@WendyPerrin.com. Hannah, thank you so much for for joining us. And Brooke, as always, you're such a fount of wisdom and information. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you tomorrow, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.